Ladies and gentlemen, mainly ladies, welcome in Berlin to the Global Women's Forum for Peace Humanitarian Action. This forum is organized by the UN Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund, together with and also with support from the German Federal Foreign Ministry. And this is also why we can hold this forum in this quite gorgeous premises in Berlin of the Foreign Office. It's really, from here from stage, it's quite impressive to see you all. Some of you have already met in the elevator or before, but to see this room really full of women traveling here from all over the world. And all are working and leading civil society organizations for peace, security, and humanitarian action. And many of you have traveled very long and very far. And some of you maybe also have faced some unforeseen challenges. Today we are also here together with supporting partners from governments, from UN agencies, from members of the German Bundestag, and also non-government institutions and research institutions based in Berlin. And also a warm welcome to all those, I don't know where the camera is to look to, but a warm welcome also to all those attendants who are with us connected online for the first two sessions of the forum. We are very happy to have you here with us. So for the 3 days, we are here gathering in Berlin together because there's still a lot to do to make the world a more safer and peaceful place, and also to recognize the role women and women's organizations are playing in this. So over the next 3 days together, we will explore the impact and the importance of women CSO for peace, security, and humanitarian action. We will discuss also challenges and priorities for this work. And we want to develop joint recommendations addressed to policymakers, to development organizations, to practitioners, and to donors. And of course, also this forum, after a long time of COVID restrictions, I think many of you have been confronted with, this is also an opportunity to meet together, to come together again as a community, to strengthen each other, to network among each other, and maybe also sparkle new cooperations among some of the CSOs here. My name is Hanna Büttner. I'm a facilitator, social scientist from Germany. And the first time I came across women CSO on the grassroots level was approximately 30 years ago in the remote Chota Nagpur area in India around the very contested issue of forest management. And these impressions and experiences led me to become a facilitator for integrative dialogues and for multi-stakeholder dialogues, so to support diverse actors come together to listen and to speak to each other, and hopefully also to strengthen each other to create a better future. So I'm feeling very pleased and honored to be your MC, Master of Ceremony, for the next 3 days and accompany you in this role. Now, before I hand over to our honorable speakers, I like to share some housekeeping information. First of all, as has been mentioned, there will be, most of the sessions, there will be translation from these 5 languages into English and vice versa. In case you like to make a contribution, be it on stage or be it in the plenary with a mic, in a language other than English, please indicate in advance so that everyone can get ready, put on the headphone, choose the right channel, and get your full message. I will also kindly remind you always on this issue. Then a second thing is, you see, maybe we have a lot of light here, we have a lot of cameras and video going on, and maybe some of you are not feeling so comfortable with this. Just in case you don't like to be recorded, photographed, or also tagged in social media, you're invited also to notify this to the team. Matthew, who is a nice guy standing behind, the tall guy, you can't overlook him. So please approach him just in case you do not want to be photographed and you want to be removed also from the videos. So this can be taken care of. because you see they're around also coming here on stage, so there will be quite a lot of documentation of this really unique opportunity here. And I'm very pleased also to introduce our graphic recorder here. This is Yasmin, and she will capture for the next 3 days our discussions, ideas, maybe also feelings, highlights of the forum throughout the next 3 days. She will do it live, so you can always have a look what she is drawing there. And you can also approach her in case you see something, you like to share your thoughts, or you like to something to be included, yeah? Then she will also take care of it. And at the end, on day 3, we will all together have a look on it and discuss and see what has been recorded here. Because we're having so many languages, and I think the pictures are telling more than 1,000 words, as we are saying here. So, then I also like to mention one thing. I don't want to forget, there's also a prayer room available here. And if you like to use a prayer room, then please feel free to address the team at the help desk in the accreditation area, and they can show you how to approach to the prayer area. So I think these were all the things I have to say. Yes. So now we are ready for the real opening of the forum. And I like to invite the Minister of State for Europe and Climate, Mrs. Anna Lührmann from the German Federal Foreign Office, on stage. And great to have you here. Looking forward to your message.
Yeah, good morning and a warm welcome to Berlin. I'm very pleased that we are able to host the Global Women's Forum for Peace and Humanitarian Action for the first time here in Berlin. Today's forum is the second of its kind, following the debut event in 2020 in Vienna. It was initially planned as a yearly format, but unexpectedly put on hold due to the pandemic. All the more, I'm really pleased that this forum can reunite here in person after 3 long years. Looking at today's presence, I'm delighted how women's participation in conflict prevention, in humanitarian response, and in peace processes matters to so many of you, the same way how it matters to us. For that, I would really like to thank you for your numerous attendance, but also, and in particular, for your constant support and your commitment to supporting people around the world. I would also like to express my deepest gratitude to the Secretariat of the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund, who has put so much work into organizing this conference and into having us all gathered here today. Germany is more than ever committed to advocate for the participation of women in peace processes and in reconstruction, and to overcome the structural discrimination and gender-specific vulnerabilities in humanitarian emergencies. We launched, as I hope all of you know, a feminist foreign policy in March of this year. The 3R, rights, representation, and resources, are an unprecedented component of our foreign policy, which will guide our work throughout all spheres of our global engagement. Be it in our foreign policy, in our European policy, our work in the United Nations, and in other international fora. Above all, it gives us a framework for how we can support projects that promote gender equality. Thus, for the very first time, we are now implementing gender budgeting as an integral part of our federal foreign project funding. This allows us to aim at making 58% of all project funding to be gender sensitive and 8% to be gender transformative. 3 bitter facts, however, guide our feminist foreign policy. First, we must acknowledge that still worldwide rights of women and marginalized groups are being restricted or are not even recognized. Second, we must face the fact that almost everywhere women and marginalized groups are underrepresented in political and economic decision-making processes. Lastly, there's still an immense lack of equal resources, such as financial means and needs-based support. Therefore, it is our goal to bring participation, resources, and rights of women worldwide to the forefront of our agenda, of everyone's agenda. Germany is really committed to this cause, and we are determined to continue our support for such courageous local civil society organizations at the forefront of conflicts such as the one that you are a part of. In Libya, for example, we support a project where, despite street fighting and rampant poverty, courageous women and men advocate for women's participation in the reconstruction of their country. Through their relentless dedication in setting up spaces where civil society groups can meet and have dialogues, they contribute to creating new perspectives for Libya. And I personally know about the strength of Libyan women. 10 years ago, I led the first training for women parliamentarians after the fall of the Gaddafi regime in Tripoli. It was very clear that there are many, many very dedicated, very experienced and committed women in this country. Unfortunately, due to fighting, the transition got out of track. And I know that many of the Libyan women, some of them are among us here, are working very, very hard to put the transition back on track for the sake of the Libyan women, for the sake of everyone in Libya, and we strongly stand at your side in this endeavor. We need strong partners to reach out to those women who are in the midst of conflict and who risk their daily lives to advocate for change. I can also personally say, and I say this with great sadness, that several of the women that attended my training 10 years ago have been assassinated since. So I know about the great personal risks that many women across the world take in order to contribute to a better future for their country, and you have my deep admiration for this. So we need strong partners, and the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund is such a strong partner for us. The fund does not only enable us to act swiftly where the usual bureaucratic processes might slow things down, but it also makes change on a global scale, aiming to reach women in the most hazardous environments of conflict and humanitarian crisis. You have access to the very women who are so often excluded from decision-making processes or financial support in insecure and fragile humanitarian contexts. The impact of the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund and its global work is also reflected in this very room here today. In fact, we are honored to have representatives from local grassroots civil society organizations from around 30 countries here with us. I'm thrilled that so many of you have taken the long journey to Berlin to be part of this conference and to share your stories and challenges in your work, remarkable work for which I and my colleagues have the utmost respect. We are very well aware that violent conflicts, wars, repression, and humanitarian crises are raging and are continuing to be on the rise. Women and girls are often even the most affected parts of population by the impacts of such crises, but they are often forgotten and neglected. Additional climate-related factors such as severe droughts, water scarcity, heavy rainfall, and floods will continue to deteriorate the security situation and bear drastic effects for women, their families, and the environment. As State Minister for Europe and Climate, the impact of climate change on livelihoods and the interlinkages to resource scarcity and, in the end, to conflicts and crises are my priorities. According to a survey that the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund conducted with 282 civil society organizations from 31 countries, many of those are here in the room today, common concerns stood out for the majority of the participants: food security, gender equality, and climate change. One country that is among the most vulnerable countries in the world to the climate crisis is Sudan. We all remember the disastrous floods a few years ago that scientists linked to the climate crisis. These floods were unprecedented in known history. They cost countless lives, destroyed destroyed livelihoods, and also impeded the fragile democratic transition process that the country was in. Climate-related risks, paired with ongoing political instability, with armed conflicts, with high international displacement, pose extreme security challenges to women around the world. Also, from a personal experience, I can say that for the people in Sudan, this is really a very challenging time. I have done a master's in gender and peace studies in Sudan in 2013, worked a lot with the many courageous women in the country, and was very proud when I saw that women were at the forefront of the peaceful revolution in Sudan a few years ago. And so, as I'm sure many of you, I'm really devastated by the current situation. What we need now is a stable ceasefire, is humanitarian access, and then a return to the democratic transition. For the sake of the women in Sudan, for the sake of everyone in Sudan, and let me assure you that we stand by your side in this struggle, as I'm sure many of us here. To conclude, Germany has contributed 52 million euros to the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund since its establishment. We will continue its relentless support for conflict prevention and the rapid response window for the participation of women in peace processes in the mentioned countries, but also elsewhere. To conclude, dialogue is essential. I can only stress how important it is, and that we can come together here now today and listen to each other, learn from each other during this forum of this year. Thank you really for being here. Shukran jazilan to everyone from Sudan and Libya, and I wish you a very inspiring conference.
Thank you so much also for sharing the political perspective and also your personal experience and your great respect and appreciation for all the work that is being done. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Amina Mohamed from the United Nations Deputy Secretary General, and she will share her message in a recorded video message, which will be translated live. So in case you're not following English, please put on also, or leave on your translation device so that you can follow. Our next speaker, Amina Mohamed, and please share the video now.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to address you today on this important occasion. I would like to convey my thanks to the government of Germany for hosting this meeting, and for their thought leadership and support to local women's organizations at the forefront of conflicts and crises. First, I must say how inspired I am by the collective expertise of the women civil society leaders gathered here today. They bring decades of experience and expertise on what is needed to maintain the social fabric and keep entire communities intact during active conflicts, and know what it is necessary to build cohesive, more peaceful and more sustainable societies after the horrors of war, the debilitating impact of economic and health crises. Women like you, who are on the front lines, are the glue that hold people together during the worst of times, and the torch that can shed light on the way forward afterwards. From Ukraine to Afghanistan, Myanmar to Sudan, we are witnessing an alarming backlash to the fundamental rights of women and girls, exacerbated by instability, war, the impacts of global climate crises, and the reverberations of the COVID-19 pandemic. In these same places and all over the world, we see women at the front lines standing up for democratic values and for human rights, the rights of all. Against all odds, women organize, women mobilize, women use their tenacity and determination to engage the world as well as the authorities before them to bring about a less violent, less wasteful, more just and inclusive world. Women are the true face of building more peaceful and sustainable communities. This is why whenever we discuss conflicts and crises, we must have women at the table. Women work to prevent and mediate conflict, respond to humanitarian emergencies, broker peace processes, combat sexual and gender-based violence, and lift communities out of poverty. We, the United Nations family, stand with you. As you gather to share and celebrate the transformational impact you've had around the world, I hope you will also send us a clear message on how we can present in supporting you. I look forward to receiving the Common Declaration and learning how we can step up financial commitments, forge new partnerships, and amplify your voices from the front lines. In solidarity and with much respect, I wish you a rewarding meeting. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to...
Thank you also now for these words, which you cannot hear, but I think that can be shared. Now, among us is our next speaker. She is Päivi Kanisko. She is the Chief Peace, Security and Resilience at UN Women. And we are very pleased to have you here with us and to listen to your introduction words. Welcome, Päivi, on stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanna. Excellency, Minister of State Lyrman, dear civil society leaders, dear colleagues and friends from all different organizations and entities, and good morning to you all. First, I want to echo our deep appreciation to the government of Germany for making this forum possible, but also for being the largest and strongest contributor to the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund. Your unwavering support to local women's organizations on the front lines around the world, now well embedded in bold feminist foreign policy, brings some hope in this world where crises of all kinds are increasing in number and complexity. Let me also say, State Minister Lyrman, your words, they were so inspiring to listen to. And during this time, how often, also in New York, where I'm based, we are listening to messages that are pushing down women's rights, that are telling, don't do that, promoting war and promoting chaos. How inspiring it is to hear the words that support women's movement, that support feminism, and that speak for women's rights. Very, very inspiring, very refreshing. So thank you, Germany, for being such a model in this, our, should I say, chaotic world of today. I also want to thank each civil society leader in this room. Thank you for being with us today, and as already mentioned, you traveled from far and you had difficult travels. You are taking time away from your communities, from your families, from your critical work on the front lines for demonstrating your dedication and commitment to our shared goals of creating a more equal and peaceful world. Let me also say that what I convey and what we convey from UN Women at, where there is conflict and crisis, there are always women's organizations. Where no international peace operations reach, where no international efforts reach, there are always women's civil society working for peace, security, and bringing humanitarian support in the most remote areas of the world, most difficult to access areas of the world. So this movement is everywhere in the world. I am so honored to be with you in the same room and same forum. So thank you. I also want to thank our forum organizers at the United Nations Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund. This fund has an amazing secretariat, and you will hear Rita Chiari, my colleague and head of a secretariat. Whole team is amazing. dear everyone, dear donors, dear civil society members, dear UN partners, we are in such good hands with this Secretariat. The fund is a partnership between the United Nations, member states and civil society, who all have an equal space and equal voice in its decision-making voices. I am particularly proud of a central role that UN Women plays in the continued success and growth of Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund. We are proud to host the Global Secretariat. We are also a member of its Global Funding Board, and we are the primary entity providing technical support to local women's organizations at country level. I would also like to acknowledge fellow UN, civil society and government board members, most of them being here with us today, including UNFPA, which is currently and so skillfully serving as the chair of the board. Also from the UN Peacebuilding Support Office and UNHCR are the UN members, and say we have really great collaboration among UN entities. I also really want to mention the long-time donor partners who are here in the room. We talked about Germany already with its amazing contribution, but we also have Norway, Italy, and USAID, who are all in the board members, and they are board members because they have been the largest contributors to the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund during past year. As you know, Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund is a unique and innovative financing mechanism supporting the transformational work of every civil society leader in this room. Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund focuses on your needs, your demands, your priorities across the humanitarian, development, peace nexus, and gets beyond them with funding, visibility, and advocacy. Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund supports the capacities of your organizations and fosters solidarity, sisterhood, and exchange through its global learning hub. It's not somebody else's priorities, it's not somebody else's projects you are asked to implement. We are asking, Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund is asking you to implement your own priorities because we believe in your priorities. Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund has now become a fully functioning and well-recognized fund, which has now mobilized around $150 million to support the work of organizations like yours. Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund has supported so far close to 1,000 civil society organizations in 41 countries, almost half of which are receiving funding from the UN for the first time, supporting new partners leading local efforts at the forefront of peace building and humanitarian action. And let me say, many UN funding mechanisms have a prerequisite that you have had to receive funding before from the UN to get funding, for example, in humanitarian settings. Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund is often that first door through which you can enter, so you can also access other funding mechanisms after that. Over 90% of WPHF's partners are operating at the subnational level, demonstrating the fulfillment of its mandate to fund organizations with access and capacity to reach the most marginalized communities on the front lines. However, funding for local women's groups remains scarce, and the quality of it, including for WPHF, can and should be improved. We need to think how best to adapt to our new and shifting realities, respond to the shrinking space for local women peace builders, enhance our flexibility and adaptability to truly support women and organizations like yours. Me also say, just before coming here, we also heard that funding for organizations that are established to oppose women's rights actually exceeds funding to organizations that support women's rights. So, trust me, you are doing such amazing work here. This is not just local level, this is a global issue that we are dealing with, and we have to change this situation with time. Today's forum provides the opportunity to bring together women civil society leaders to do just that. By exchanging perspectives, challenges, and impacts, we can create new synergies and partnerships with women champions on peace building, human rights, humanitarian action across the globe. By sharing a common assessment of a situation and of your needs, we can continue to build a global movement that supports women's meaningful participation to peace and security processes and humanitarian response. Like I said, I am so proud to convene with all of you here today as a community. Together we are that global village, and I look forward to listening to your perspectives, learning from your expertise, and working alongside each of you as we call on the world to invest in women to forge inclusive and sustainable peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much also for sharing perspectives from the global perspective, and also for all the appreciation of the fund and its work, and of course also of this event here. Now, our next speaker, I like to welcome here on my side on stage is Zofia Burtak. She is from Ukraine, and she is the founder and the president of the Rural Women Business Network. I met you already at breakfast, so we chatted a little bit about the challenges, and now warm welcome and looking forward to your welcome words. Please.
Thank you, Hanna. My name is Zofia Burtak, and I'm Doctor of Political Science who loves working in rural development, who loves agriculture, and especially to empower women and bring resources for rural women from all over I can get it. Last 15 years, I was developing cooperatives as alternative economy favorable for women in equal access and decision-making. But 10 years, I work in war conditions. I know how to be afraid for my life, but I travel to the front line wearing the bulletproof vest, wearing the helmet, to support women and men to deliver goods and build networks. For the last year of Russia's invasion to Ukraine, I learned all correlations between food production and safety to work in the field, between women leadership and management of resources for IDPs, between networking and rearranging your life in a place new for you, just for a couple of days, between the skills which we are promoting and women's security, their ability to survive. We all learned. I will do my best to open this forum, talking on behalf of all women in all their diversities, representing here from civil society organizations who are taking these challenges and building peace in their communities despite all barriers. While we are acknowledging women all over the world, their strengths, their capacities, their achievements, and celebrate their successes, we are calling for more equal conditions for women in the workforce, in politics, closing the knowledge gaps in business, and bringing more empowerment in decision-making and trying to end the violence. But progress is very slow. When it comes to what I call border experience, violence, conflict, crisis, disaster, women often face marginalization and they are excluded. They feel alone. I felt alone. It is about young women and girls, against whom emotional violence is many times more powerful. And it is about the safety of all women and right to be free from violence. Too often we are pushed back as it's not the right time to talk about women issues, to talk about equality, inclusion, and build social justice. What we do as women and women's organization, we accept the challenge, and I can share how. We take leadership roles in our communities and create humanitarian channels and deliver aid through more equal and more equal channels to include all women, especially rural areas. We fight the fear. In fragile settings, women start driving the car, doing things they never did before, evacuating their families, building businesses, providing for the families. I've never seen more initiatives than today, where women are motivated to start up businesses, especially in cooperation with other women, even in work conditions. We master the technology. Women take over and are ready to mechanize their work in households, in farming, in volunteering. Women and young women especially use digitalization as a window of opportunities to be more visible, vocal, and entrepreneurs and demand peace. Security and safety are the cornerstone. Women's rights are being pushed back, and women human rights defenders and marginalized groups are being threatened and attacked in many ways. But we still stand up. I can talk on behalf of women who are in occupation or in front lines where fields are mined. It is essential, and we are bringing rural women, especially participation in decision-making on the mining priorities, as it is threatening the livelihoods and food security. We prevent violence. The context of war or crisis increases number of victims of sexual and gender-based violence, but local women organizations play an incredible role of guardians and defenders of women who experience sexual and gender-based violence and who care for the survivors of such violence when no one else can reach them. We lobby, we speak up, we bring our chair to the decision-making table and peace talks to have political and peace processes that consider us. We don't give up, even though we are often not invited to the room. We integrate youth. Often their suggestions are neglected in fragile contexts, but we have been recently witnessing how active young women and men are in building networks of volunteers all over the world. Their sense of justice and its dominant energy is bringing forward new prerequisites for the development of society. I can tell you, being a volunteer for more than 20 years. Women who bring the voices of marginalized women, for example, from the rural communities of women with disabilities to the forefront and ensure their inclusion in all decisions that affect their life and security. These are not only experiences that I made, but I know as well that many more women and men and their organization all around the world, all of the women and men invited to this forum are fighting to implement positive change in conflict prevention, resolution, and peace building, and economic recovery for their communities and countries. In 2020, around 70 women peace builders from all around the world gathered in Vienna to combine their experiences and knowledge in the Vienna Declaration 2020. Let us build on the work done by those women and men and join forces and build societies this upcoming 3 days to continue their work and develop the Global Women Forum Outcome Document 2023 here in Berlin. But even more, let's network, let's develop joint actions, and let's learn from each other and support each other. Therefore, I am welcoming all the women peace builders and human rights activists who are not only present in this room, but also ones who are online, who couldn't come. I can witness, I also not always can fly and drive in the conditions which is in my country. That's why all around the world, online and offline, I welcome to this forum to see empowering and dynamic platform. And I invite you to stand up and cheer for each other. So I am calling all women and men who are working in conflict prevention, who are involved in resolving the conflict. I welcome those who fight to protect the rights of women and girls in fragile context. I welcome those men and women who fight against violence, against women and girls in conflict and crisis settings. I welcome organizations, women and men, who support women leading in humanitarian response, who are rebuilding their societies after the conflict and creating better lives of their communities, who are influencing peace processes and implementation of peace agreements, who empower youth and ensure their representation in decision-making, who are inviting youth to the table of the political decisions, who work in environmental protection and climate change, fighting climate change-related conflicts and their effects on women. I know this from Ukraine. Women are more and more witnessing the effect of climate change. The rockets which are flying in our sky is not making the climate better. And women feel that. I welcome as well organizations who develop entrepreneurship and economic recovery for women in crisis environment. I can say that networking and building alliances is the key for my organization. And I'm sharing my inspiration to extend our networks as internationally as possible. I believe in sisterhood. Even in fragile and crisis situations, we are able to advocate together. We strengthen women's direct engagement in humanitarian decision-making. We ensure women and youth crucial participation across all post-war reconstruction and recovery efforts. I encourage all of us to actively participate in this forum to ensure that our movement will last long after those 3 days. I want to thank to Women, Peace and Humanitarian Fund and to the government of Germany who gave us this opportunity. And the new synergies among organizations and countries that we will build here in Berlin will give possibilities to create coalitions and joint actions to ensure the recognitions and support for women activists and their civil society organizations working in peace, security, and humanitarian action. We all are one woman. On behalf of Ukrainian women, we are solidar with all women in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for your very inclusive, emotional, and encouraging also message to your fellows, and also for sharing your very practical experiences and learning experience you didn't choose to get. But yeah, thank you so much. Now, I like to welcome on floor the head of Secretariat of the Women, Peace and Humanitarian Fund, Rita El-Khiari. And she will give you an overview now of the flow of the forum, what you can expect from the forum. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's really, really nice. Such an honor, such a pleasure, and such a humbling experience for me and my entire team to have you all here today. You're the very reason we all do the work that we do. The Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund does only one thing, is support local women's organizations, local women peace builders, local humanitarian responders, and human rights activists on the front line of crisis around the world. So for us, this is very much as good as it gets in our daily work. So thank you so much for being here. So as mentioned by a lot of colleagues already since the beginning of this program and the opening this morning, this forum will gather about 90 women's organizations from 29 countries around the world. All of them, of course, are experiencing crisis, conflict, and humanitarian crisis around the world. So we will have 3 days of a very exciting, full of diverse things agenda that I would like to walk you through. So as you know, this forum has some key objectives that we want to focus on. So the first one is really joint advocacy and knowledge sharing. So we will discuss together what are the best advocacy strategies that you are employing in your specific context and how we can share those, learn from one another on those strategies, but also how we can work together more across those advocacy strategies to advance the women, peace and security and humanitarian action agenda over the world. Another objective is, of course, sharing and learning from one another. So we will be discussing all of the best practices, all of the results and the incredible impact that you are having in your work and how we can all learn, of course, from that. Another component of this forum will be capacity building, and what we want to do is really focus on one thematic area in terms of capacity building, which is self-care, because as it was mentioned earlier today, many of you and the leaders that are working in this space face stress, harassment, threats, security issues. So we want to take a little bit of time to think together on how we can deal with those a little bit better, and also that you think about your own self-care and your own needs so that you can continue with the work that you're undertaking. The fourth component of this forum will be giving you visibility, amplifying your voices, amplifying your stories. You are at the heart of this agenda, of the Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action agenda. So we want to make sure that your work is better known and more visible across the board. In terms of concrete things that we expect to have out of this meeting, the first one is, and this was also mentioned by Amina Mohammed, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, is a joint declaration, an outcome document where we will be discussing and putting together a message to the international community of how we can support you better. What are your needs? What are the things that you need better support on? And I'm very happy to see that she has already committed to looking at it carefully so that she can act on it on behalf of the UN family, but also, of course, to international donors and other stakeholders. There will also be a global report of this forum that will also capture some of the impact stories, the challenges and everything that you're facing, that will also make your work more visible. And finally, we would like to also come out with concrete ideas of joint actions that you can undertake together. And I'm very proud to announce also that the government of Germany has also agreed to fund some of those so that we can actually have something practical out of this event of concrete ideas and joint actions that you can lead together across borders, across countries, to continue to build this movement of solidarity and sisterhood across the movement. Today, as you know, will be an open day, so it will be open to external participants beyond you. So it will be also open to governments, the UN, some partners here from Berlin. It will focus mostly on impact and your successes and how you manage to get some of the results that you are getting daily in your communities. So it will be both in plenary sessions and breakout groups. And we will also have the privilege to have a conversation with the German foreign minister around the feminist foreign policy of Germany and how that can be taken into action in support of local women's organizations. So they will be in conversation with her today. Tomorrow we'll be focusing on identifying challenges and priorities. So in the morning we will be focusing on the challenges, the threats, the risks, the things that you need and you're still not getting to support your work. And in the afternoon we will focus on these joint actions that I was mentioning earlier, and how to come up with concrete and new ideas on how to translate these ideas into concrete actions to be implemented after the forum. And then on day 3, we will be focusing on revising the outcome document, the joint declaration. So we will be capturing all of the ideas during the first 2 days. Colleagues will draft something in the evening of day 2, present it back to you on day 3. And then we will discuss the draft outcome declaration in breakout groups and plenary session. And we're hoping to have something that we can adopt in the afternoon before we close. So this is, in a nutshell, what we're planning to do across the next 3 days. I would also like to invite you to provide us with any feedback for me and the entire WPHF Secretariat in terms of how we can do as a fund better to support you. What are the challenges? We're always trying to do better in supporting local women's organizations in crisis settings. So please also take this opportunity to provide us with direct feedback, which we're always very happy to hear. Welcome again. Thank you again to the German government for their incredible support and for hosting this forum. And I very much look forward to the discussions across the next 3 days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rita. Now, for giving this overview of the next 3 days and what we like to achieve together. Now, we have foreseen a little break before we will start here on the plenary. Actually, the break was foreseen until 11:15, which will be approximately 12 minutes, which is not very much, as you are all aware of. So take care of yourself if you have to grab a drink, or maybe just chat with your neighbor, because probably you didn't have so much time. And we will start here then at 11:15 with the first content-related discussion. And I also like to thank to all the online participants who followed the session so far. We hope you enjoyed it, and maybe also see you again then for the next session starting at 11:15. Thank you so much.